Welcome everyone. We're just letting everyone in through the waiting room. So if you just give us a moment as we let that process go. Thank you all for joining us. Just always takes a minute or two to get everyone into the waiting room. They're still flying in. But as for those who have been on our webinars before, you know my famous catchphrase is we reward those who are on time. So we will jump in and get started as the rest start flowing in. So welcome everyone to the next in our de Jonge Read series. We had a month off last month where we were lucky enough to catch up with a lot of you in person at our seminar series all over Australia. For those who are lucky enough from Sydney, they caught up with Stan already. And the Brisbane guys had the pleasure of Hank, and Victorians were stuck with me. So, but we will. So today, the webinar has been called "Navigating the Perfect Storm," and we've got two fantastic speakers in. My business partner and founder of de Jonge Read, Hank de Jonge. So, hello, Hank.
Thank you. Thanks.
Stan he's about to take himself off mute. Good. Stan Corner from ATOmate. So welcome, Stan.
Thanks, Ash.
So
Thanks, Hank.
We'll jump in, and for those who don't know everyone, Hank, we'll start with you. If I'll just get you to do a little intro on yourself so that those who aren't familiar with you can learn a bit more.
Excellent. Thanks, Ashley. My name's Hank de Jonge. I'm the founder of de Jonge Read, and for those of you who join Ashley on our webinars regularly or attend our seminars, you know a little bit about our firm and my story. But I'm just going to spend 3 minutes and just elaborate a little bit on the background of my story, which led to de Jonge Read. I guess 24 years ago, I was in a situation. I had a reasonably successful business on the Gold Coast. We turned over about 6 or 7 million a year. We had September 11 come along, and with that, it affected our industry dramatically, and our turnover dropped from 6 or 7 down to about 2 or 3. We had a real issue there because we just weren't making enough money to pay the overheads. I had a really good accountant, really good lawyer, and I was sitting down with these guys and asking them, how do I save the house? How do I save the car? How do I, get out of this the best way possible? And they said, look, not our forte, go and see an insolvency practitioner. So I did. I drove into Brisbane, sat down with an insolvency practitioner and asked him the same questions, because that was what was important to me at the time, was my family. How do I get out of this the best way possible? And now, having a chat with the insolvency practitioner, he said, look, I know how to navigate through I know how you can move stuff around and do all sorts of different things. But he said, look, if I tell you how to do that, I'll conflict myself out of a job, because an insolvency practitioner has got a fiduciary duty to get the best result for creditors, not me, the director. I left that meeting pretty scared, pretty upset. I appointed the guy because I didn't have a choice, and I ended up personally bankrupt a few months later, and we lost the house, we lost the cars, we lost everything. Probably the most harrowing experience of my life. Going through that, after I was starting to work my way through, I realised I didn't have to have lost the house, and I could have kept the car, and I potentially could have kept the business as well if I knew how the game worked, which I didn't at the time. So nearly 20 years ago, I established the firm de Jonge Read to do nothing but give company directors and individuals no-nonsense direct advice on how best to navigate the insolvency framework. And like I said, that was some 20 odd years ago, and that's the background to how the firm started.
Thank you very much. It's always a good story to hear. Stan, I'll just allow you to probably do a little bit of the same, a little bit of a background on yourself and the story for you before we get into our what we wanted to talk about today.
Thanks, Ash. Yeah, Hank, the backstory is always super interesting, and I didn't know that. But the backstory is always interesting in how we come to this point of where we are today. So my background is much different. While our business serves the accounting industry, I'm not an accountant. My background is simply business. So over the last 30 odd years, I've run a number of businesses. My focus has always been around, first of all, understanding the customer, really important part. And Hank, that's pretty much what you just talked about, right? Understanding the customer situation. So understanding the customer, then empowering the business and the team to deliver really good outcomes to that customer. And the way we've achieved that, or I've achieved that over many years, it's a funny statement, but it's true. Probably the number one thing I've done over all of those years is hired people who are a hell of a lot smarter than me, particularly around the various areas of the businesses that we serve. That's the first thing. The second thing is we've always been very, very process driven. If we go back 30 years, this would have been a set of binders with lots and lots of processes written for team members to follow. Over a number of years, we started using tech instead of binders. And that led to the commencement of business automation works about 5 or 6 years ago. And our product for this industry, serving the accounting industry, is ATOmate. Where did that come from? Working with customers in a different industry, talking about their problems, getting those really smart cookies around me to develop what we now know as ATOmate today. The way we achieved that was we really listened to the customer, understood the problem that they have. We then took that business problem, turned it into a technical problem, turned it into a technical solution. And what we do today is we deliver that back to the accounting industry as a solution that solves problem. So my background is really business, growing businesses super fast through empowerment of people, process, and really importantly, tech.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So both of you have got angles in terms of dealing with particularly the ATO and the issues that we've got, which leads to the topic today around dealing with and navigating this perfect storm. And we are talking primarily about ATO debt. So Stan, why don't I start with you and just talk about what's driving this debt surge that we're all dealing with at the moment.
Yeah, so thanks, Ash. I think the perfect storm it's probably imperfect. However, this storm started, quite a number of years ago, and what we're seeing today is probably easily identifiable, at least in part, to COVID. So we go back 5 or 6 years. During the COVID period, what we know is while some businesses struggled, others thrived. But what we saw is the ATO, as part of our federal government's response to COVID, was a directive to go easy on business. What that really meant is they, weren't collecting tax debt. Where tax debt became overdue, they were not aggressive. It was pretty easy to have debt or general interest charges remitted, etc. So in a lot of ways, that is probably part of the cause. But I think in part what has happened here is it may have taught some businesses that ATO debt is the last thing. So what we've seen over the years, I think there's some stat. So in 2000, and here's a really good stat, in 2017, the general interest charges on overdue debt was between, it was in the high millions of dollars. In 2021, the general interest charges is $1.65 billion on outstanding debt. That's not the debt, folks. That is the general interest charges. So we'll calculate that back. So let's talk about really how this happens, or how we've seen this happen. What we see is, in a lot of cases, businesses may be paying the ATO last. One indicator. Another is businesses not understanding their obligations. And I think that's a big part of how the problem starts. So we see the very early stages of this through the process or our solution that we offer accounting firms, in that we collect all of those notices out of the ATO, and the sorts of things we see is certainly debt reminders. If we go back pre-COVID, the average in the benchmark in a practice for overdue reminders or debt reminders in a practice of total documents was about 12%. So about 12. What we saw towards the end of COVID, most practices were seeing 35 to 40% of the documents received were debt related. That's a massive jump. Now, we've seen that come back, absolutely. However, as we know, the ATO has made some pretty significant changes around this debt collection. There's no longer that forgiveness. Don't worry about it. We'll get it later, right? What we're seeing is that the ATO now has a very clear directive to collect debt, and they're undertaking some pretty serious and aggressive steps, not just reminder, but things like referring debt to credit rating agencies. That is a really hard pill for any business to swallow. It impacts their ability to continue to trade or borrow money to continue to trade. Moves forward from that, garner share, DPNs. I know we can talk about DPNs, but we are seeing a significant volume of DPNs. But the perfect storm is really this. While all of that is going on, one of the challenges is the taxpayers we see, our experience shows taxpayers are often ill or uninformed, number one. So it just happens that all of a sudden they've got a DPN. And in part of that, and I apologise to all the tax agents on the call, in part of that problem is often the tax agent representing these taxpayers is also ill-informed, possibly through no fault of their own. And let me explain why I say no fault of their own. The ATO, during this change of very relaxed on debt, moving to collecting debt very aggressively, have implemented lots of changes to move to digital. What that means is the way the ATO is communicating with both the tax agent and the taxpayer has changed. And what we see in the industry, and certainly with taxpayers, there's a lot of confusion, misconceptions around how this is actually working today. So kind of in a way, the ATO broke the norm system. Therefore, that's contributing to this perfect storm.
But Hank, I'll go to you just in regard to this, because I think there's no doubt, and I know we had Anita Cullen from the ATO on one of our webinars late last year, and she was talking about the fact that the Australian taxpayer has deprioritised paying the ATO, and that's certainly causing a big part of it. But when we look at the impact of that and we talk about this storm, what does it really mean to the businesses that we're working with?
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Ash. And great summary, Stan. I'd have to agree with everything you've said there. But what we're seeing also is, but we're seeing this storm hit across lots and lots of different industries. It's just not isolated. It's not like one area. You know, we're seeing restaurants, we're seeing retail. I don't know, I sort of read an article this morning, Kakadu, I think, one of the major retailers, I think it's Kakadu, I'm not entirely sure. Sorry, what was it?
Kathmandu.
Close.
Yeah, I saw that this morning. You know, again, big long-term retailers that are suffering. Transport, we're seeing lots and lots of different industries. So certainly not isolated. And I think it's 1 in 5 businesses in Australia at the moment are at risk with ATO debt. 1 in 5. It's massive numbers. But these just aren't numbers. They're real businesses. They're employees, they're families that are being affected here. And I think often what happens is once debt builds, it compounds fast, and it very rarely shrinks unless that business is making really good profit and is able to get on top of that. So we find if clients don't act early, advisors lose that opportunity to build some real trust with those clients, because we find that's a really unique and good situation for accountants and other advisors to really build a strong relationship. And we sometimes hear business owners say, oh, geez, why didn't you tell me sooner, or why didn't you, make that really, really clear? I guess our role at De Jonge Read is giving advisors and their clients visibility of those risks early, so they can act while there are options that are on the table. And this is where, when advisors can bring us in, De Jonge Read steps in early, lays out the options. Do we need to look at protecting some assets, and what's a bit of a roadmap for the future? And I guess once a advisor's able to do that and get a client to the table, and we can have a look at that, geez, that relationship strengthens big time. So that's my thoughts, Ash.
Yeah, so and Stan mentioned it before. He talked about the DPNs and reportable tax debt. I know in the seminar series that we've just completed, we talked about the fact that in this year there was something like 30,000 businesses reported for tax debt, and over 60,000 director penalty notices issued. And you talk about how you strengthen the role with the advisor. But what I might get you to do is how does that work, and how does having these issues, how can you say that that's going to help an advisor strengthen their client relationship?
Yeah, okay. Well, those numbers are clearly accurate, Ash, and
I
that's
hope so.
And can I add frightening?
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. And that 60,000 in DPNs is record numbers of DPNs that have been issued. We did a graph at our recent seminar, and it just shows that it's off the charts. But there just aren't numbers. And I guess each one of those, it's a real business, and there's real stress underlying that. And I think the big thing is when you say, well, how can a business owner, how can an advisor use this opportunity to build trust? I think it's a great opportunity to stop and think. And there are tons of different options that are potentially available for a business owner. And it's really getting that business owner to stop, to take a breath, and to then allow a firm like us to have a look at the different options that are available. Because once obviously the Australian mentality is always, look, let's just pay that debt as quickly as we can, enter into payment plans, and sometimes those payment plans aren't affordable, and that's the ATO are now pushing back much harder on allowing these payment plans, because they don't want to be a bank anymore. But it's like I said, I think a good way to summarise it, Ashley, is to get that client to engage with someone like ourselves, to stop, to think, and to have a look at all of the options that are potentially available.
So if we look at, obviously part of this is about the preparation, and that prevention is always better than cure with this sort of stuff, and identifying where we can. Stan, if I go back to yourself, what are some of the, how do you get on the front foot, and what are some of the documents would be the flag that you would say we need to talk about?
Yeah. So, Ash, I think, Hank, what you've spent a bit of time talking about there is sort of in the eye of the storm. The storm is hitting. I want to wind back a little bit and talk about pre-storm. So, while absolutely the work you do with practice and clients once the storm is hitting is absolutely critical, I think there's the possibility for practices, tax professionals, to actually help the client before this happens. Now, maybe prevention is better than cure. Maybe it's preparation for the storm is the other side. So let's go back and talk about prevention is better than cure. So we see this every day in the service we offer practices. So and we get these relatable stories back at how this has impacted a practice. So what we've got is I like to tell a story about Tommy the plumber. So and it's a cracker, right? So young Tommy, he's a really good bloke. He branched out on his own, and he's doing pretty well. But Tommy loves to surf. So Tommy does a bit of work on the side of surfing, right? So he's got a tax agent. He's done okay, but he's really probably barely making wages. However, Tommy meets the girl of his dreams, and things start getting serious. So the girl of Tommy's dreams sits him down one day and says, "Hey, Tommy, it's awesome that you're a great surfer, and I love it. But if we're going to get serious, you're actually going to have to do some work." So Tommy puts the board down a bit more frequently and actually has a real crack at business. So at the end of that first year, Tommy's had a great year. He's made a huge profit. He goes off to his tax agent, and the tax agent goes, "Well done, Tommy. Got some good news and some bad news. The good news is you made a lot of money. The next piece of the pie is you've got a tax debt." So we lodged a return. Tommy's got a tax debt of 20 grand. So that gets lodged. Tommy's a sole trader. So that notice of assessment falls into Tommy's MyGov account. Now, Tommy, great surfer, great plumber, not real good with tech. So he actually never sees that. What then happens is over the next year, of course, he's also missed, "Hey, Tommy, you now need to pay PAYG. So you've got a $5,000 quarterly payment to make." He also does not make those payments. He comes back to see his tax agent at the end of next year, and there's good news. You've had another great year, Tommy, but you've now got a $20,000 tax debt plus the 20 grand you haven't paid, plus the penalties and the interest. Now, by this point, Tommy's bought a new truck. He's bought a couple of toys, etc., and he doesn't have the cash anymore. Now, I can see a few nods. So this is a great example of how this sort of thing starts happening. So how can the tax agent help Tommy? We see this every day. So by being proactive, making sure that you are effectively managing Tommy's affairs. And one of those effectively managing is when Tommy gets a debt or he enters PAYG, the ATO is communicating very clearly through their document process to Tommy and or tax agent. So let's play that story back. The tax agent actually received the NOA and passed it on to Tommy. Let's say Tommy didn't pay it. The tax agent receives a reminder notice. The tax agent gives Tommy a call and starts putting cash flow planning in place with Tommy so that he can meet his obligations. Great way to ensure that prevention is better than cure. Take that one step further. This whole communication process, we talk about exposure or exposing the debt to a credit rating agency. If the tax agent is aware of that, again, they can help the client understand the implications. That might be cash flow planning. It might be starting to talk to them in preparation for introducing Hank, because the cash flow is never going to meet that debt. I'll finish this off by talking about DPNs. The number of times a practice reaches out to us, and they reach out because they have a problem, and the problem looks like this. Their clients received a DPN, well, allegedly, but the DPN went to the client's home address and they'd moved a year ago. They didn't receive the DPN. The DPN 21 days for action has expired. They're now personally liable for the debt. Yes, there's a problem to fix with a client, but how do we think the relationship is between the client and the tax agent? Probably not too flash. Helping the client from that journey is often very challenging, and it probably isn't a chargeable fee. So let's flip that around and suggest the tax agent received that DPN the day after it was produced. There's 20 days with which to work with the client, introduce Hank, and actually take action to prevent what Hank went through, which was resulting in liquidation, loss of a family home and cars and everything else. So I think the preparation is two-part. Prevent the storm completely, better communication, better informed tax agent, better informed client, meeting obligations. But where that doesn't happen, you're educating the client about what is going to happen next. Hank, I'm assuming when a client comes to you and they're totally blind to the situation, that's a lot harder than someone who comes in and goes, I'm actually here because I actually understand what needs to happen next, or at least at some level.
Oh, 150%, Stan, the bottom. And I think that's one of the reasons why I like the ATOmate product so much, because it is being, we've had clients that have come to us that have said received a director's penalty notice, and there's one that springs to mind, 800 grand in director's penalty notice, and he's gone. It's a similar story. He'd moved, he wasn't aware of it. He came to see us. By the time we got our hands on this client, we had 5 days before that expired. Now, we were able to appoint a liquidator within that period and do some license agreement and then negotiate the purchase of the liquidator. But geez, it was a very, very difficult situation. And had that client been aware, when we had time to act, the outcome would have been so much better, so much easier overall. So, it's just so important for tax agents, for accountants to have that pre-warning, and especially while the ATO is at the most aggressive that we've ever seen it.
So when there's no doubt the sooner you can get in, and I think, Stan, your point of actually not getting in the drama is what we're all about. And in a perfect world, everyone would not get into the drama. I know, particularly from the Victorian point of view down here, we had such horrific lockdowns that businesses actually profited during lockdown because everyone was at home and we got plenty of money. But then you're coming out the other side. We've got cost of living pressures, we've got cost of business pressures. All of those things mean that we've got some that have got further, have got that debt already, and we need to look at how we can manage through that. And I think we can work with clients to stay out of it, and we've got some that are going to be in there already, and we need to work our way through. And we'll talk about how you can actually almost, I think one of the keys now is, and we'll talk to Hank about how he can help, but sometimes when they're in that bad spot, it's about actually taking them and then flipping it over and making them good again. And we can look through that process there. But if we look outside of, just for a minute, taking away from the stuff that the ATO is driving, being garnishee notices, the credit reporting and all that sort of stuff that Stan's talking about that we can see coming, what would be some of the other early indicators, Hank, that you would say that if we're seeing these, they're things that you should be looking at now or talking to clients about now?
Yeah, no, great, Ashley. And I think Stan was touching on it earlier. If we can get in, the earlier we can get in, the better. And I think repeated late BAS lodgements, repeated late BAS payments, clear indicator. Same with superannuation, clearly. And I guess every client that we see come through the door is in that situation. But if an accountant, tax agent can see that beforehand, can monitor that beforehand, then that is just so powerful. ATO payment plans that keep breaking.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, there's a problem there, like it's and especially now that the ATO are going to no longer allow the tax deductibility for those payment plans. It's just going to make it even more difficult. I think directors tipping in personal coin into the business to keep it afloat, that as a constant item, it's a good indicator to an accountant that maybe we should be sitting down with that client. Maybe we should be looking at what other issues are underlying. I think cash flow band-aid fixes that really don't solve the root problem. We've seen a lot of lending with the Prospers and the Moolers and those easy to get finance mobs where you just sign a bit of paper and the money's in the account in 24 hours. And I think
Yeah.
they're red flags that say it's time for action, not just education. We need to be having a look at that, and it's a great opportunity for an accountant or advisor to build that trust with the client, to sit down and have a look at those things and look at the bigger picture.
Yeah, I think I was talking to an accountant last week, and they said, I got this phone call saying, well, how do I put this transaction into zero, because they just borrowed some money off one of the fintech lenders. And he went, why are you borrowing money from them? And that was a flag enough to get them in front of us to have a look at how we could potentially, stem that flow, because they know how much it costs to have that money.
Ash, can I just add another flag here? I'm hearing from tax agents every day that it is near on impossible, if a client defaults on a payment plan, to get a new payment plan. So, it used to be easy. I had a payment plan, I defaulted, I'm going to get another payment plan. Problem solved. The other key point here is, the other thing I'm hearing is the ATO is, I think the stat is about 70% of requests for remittance of GIC is being denied. So when you start seeing you can't get a payment plan for the client, it's time to start looking at, well, it's not just I couldn't help them, but why? Because we're talking about the why, aren't we? Understanding. I started, one of the things we do super well is understand the client. If we do that, we do build that relationship for life with the tax agent. It's almost like magic. Yeah.
I like that, build a relationship for life, because really it's that tax agent just becomes so trusted by the client moving forward.
Yeah.
So, Hank, we've been talking about what we need to do. You're getting the early intervention and all of that sort of stuff. So when a tax agent comes to you or has a client that's got one of these red flags, or Stan's been able to flag some issues through his system, what are some of the what are the options that that you would be looking at with your team to help that?
Yeah, okay. Well, it's important to note that it doesn't always need to be insolvency. And that's where our service offerings are a bit different, because our toolbox is quite vast. So sometimes it's informal negotiations with creditors. Maybe it's not the ATO, maybe it's some landlords or so on. Maybe it's refinancing the right way. Okay, or maybe it is some type of formal structures like a small business restructure. The success rates generally are declining, but here at de Jonge Read, we're still receiving an 83% success rate, and our average is still less than 30 cents in the dollar. So they are working if they're presented properly. Voluntary administrations and deeds of company arrangements are another option, but there's no one size fits all, and that's the beauty of our service offering, is we're having a look at the unique situation for that particular client, and then coming up with an option based on their situation. So I think the earlier it's diagnosed, and I think we were getting that clear, and that's a big advantage of the ATOmate product, is giving accountants and advisors that opportunity to get in early, have a look, protect the business, save jobs, protect the director and the family. But I've got a Tommy story as well. So, but our Tommy story is a little bit different. So, and this is a clear example of where an accountant can really help with information from ATOmate. So our client's got a 400K tax debt, say. They're struggling on the payment plan. They miss it. They miss a payment, okay? They're notified, and the tax agent's aware that the payment plan's defaulted. Okay, the accountant sees this and he puts them on to the likes of our firm. we review it, and clearly the client is struggling making that payment plan on that 400K debt. Okay. Now, the ATO is stricter on compliance. We know that. Payment plans, as Stan just pointed out, very, very difficult to re-get, and so on. But let's have a look at, for instance, a small business restructure, an SBR. And maybe rather than that client struggling on to repay that 400K debt, they have a look at a small business restructure. And hypothetically, let's say we can do that at 30 cents in the dollar, which is achievable in a lot of situations. Now, because the client has had a payment plan and has been making payments in the past, they may have just defaulted, they've proven compliance with the ATO, and the ATO will look upon that favourably when considering a small business restructuring offer. So by having gone into that payment plan and making those payments, it will work in that client's favour. Now, if we put in an offer at 30 cents in the dollar, our debt's going to reduce to 120K, not 400. Much, much more achievable. If we did that, say, over 24 months, the monthly amounts are going to reduce from by about 11 grand a month, down to, it's a massive amount of saving that client is then going to be able to pay. So, by that advisor identifying that issue and going, listen, client, stop trying to do this payment plan you can't afford. Have a look at this other option. We get the debt down from 400 to 120. Suddenly it's affordable. There's no interest, by the way, on that offer. And we can do that over 24 months, over 36 months or so. Bottom line of it is the client super happy with the outcome because they're going, advisor, you're gold. You've introduced us to someone who could fix the problem. Now suddenly we've got a business that's got light at the end of the tunnel and can afford to continue to trade comfortably, not under stress. And I guess that's a good example where an accountant can really gain some added trust.
Hey, Hank, you're right. If I could jump in there. One of the key indicators we're talking about this red flag is your Tommy's got a payment plan. The tax agent is sitting down to do the next BAS. And it's not necessarily the payment plan's unaffordable. They can't afford the payment plan and to pay the next BAS, right? So what is actually going on here is that that what you've just described here is by reducing the liability of the payment plan, what actually happens is they can actually complete the BAS payments as they fall due. The other red flag here is a client that is lodging the BAS themselves. They've got a payment plan. They decide not to lodge a BAS because they haven't got the cash to pay it. Real important point here. Instantly that BAS lodgement is late, and everyone on this call knows this, the payment plan is in default immediately.
Yep.
So you're right. It's a great user case to go leading up to the next BAS, looking at the affordability and doing the introduction at that point is better than what happens afterwards. I love it.
And for that client, like the saving, I just had to double check my numbers, but that saving was 11 grand per month. 11 grand per, from 16 down to 5. So it's suddenly 11 grand that's available to, awesome, as you say, make the current lodgements and so on as and when they fall due, and just be able to trade comfortably.
Awesome.
So, I mean, we can go so many parts with all of this stuff, but what I wanted to, we talk about, lodging a BAS late, Stan. I mean, there's a real risk of a lockdown director penalty on the back of that facility as well. And then, I had a client just last night that called, and I asked him to send through his integrated client accounts. He thought all his tax debt was sitting in the company. But once he sent me everything through, we've actually got 90% of it's actually on him personally already. Mm-hmm. So now I'm not looking at a corporate matter. I'm having to deal with a personal matter. So all of these things we're trying to almost get themselves out of their own way. And so one of the things, and again, like with this client, the first thing I said is, mate, can you go into your MyGov, go into the account summary and give me a printout and let me know what's in there. And that's where we found all this other stuff. So if we're looking at that prevention stuff or this early intervention, or for the people on the call to be able to go, not wait till 5 days before the DPN's announced, what does ATOmate do to help that break that barrier that's of what's going into the MyGov?
Yeah, cool. So it's a great point. The ATO communicates with tax agents and taxpayers across multiple channels. In the bad old days, good old days, it was Aussie Post. Postie Pat would get all the mail and deliver it to someone, right? Known. What's happened now is, if you're an individual and you have a MyGov account, and most of us do, and most of us attach the ATO to MyGov, mostly during COVID, because you needed MyGov to get a vax certificate, right? So the volume of MyGov's increased. So the ATO will communicate all of those communications directly to the MyGov, bypassing the tax agent. So if you think that you're getting it in MyGov to Mythbuster, the answer is no. Very importantly, the other channels, some of those are only to the tax agent. So sorry, before I go there, I'm going to get back. So my data, our experience says that less than 15%, I'm going to say that again, less than 15% of taxpayers in this country that have a MyGov are active in their MyGov account. Active means they logged in the last year. What that means is they're in the dark. I'm going to talk about PAYGs. It is a massive issue. The ATO has changed the way they distribute PAYGs. I personally believe a big percentage of this debt is missed PAYG instalments. In the good old days, again, all of those PAYGs went to the tax agent or the client taxpayer directly by paper. That doesn't happen. 87% of all entities on PAYGi today are set as digital. When they're set as digital, they are not sent to the client. I'm going to myth bust. They don't go to the client by email. They do not get put into the client's MyGov account. So even those who are active, there is no PAYG notice. So they are available to the agent. It in communication history is agent online. So super importantly, anyone on the calls are getting the phone call, hey, from clients, I didn't get my PAYG installment, I didn't pay it, now I've got a debt collector. What are you doing? Because it's clearly your fault, tax agent. Really important point. So what does ATOmate do? We collect all of those documents overnight, every night. The ATO creates that PAYG, a payable statement of account, whatever it is today. We collect it tonight, and it is pushed through an automated process to do validation and checking, then comes into the ATOmate dashboard for each practice for review and action. What this means is the simple stuff, shoot it off to the client, there's your refund, but the things that you need to review, you get to look at, help the client understand their obligations. This is about communication in real terms, all right? So the ATO sitting here, taxpayer here, a lot of these documents go around the tax agent that sits in the middle. What we effectively do is we put the tax agent back in control, make sure you're informed. And from a client perspective, what actually happens is the client gets this communication from you first. You are their source of truth. Again, we go back to that client for life. So this is about better informed clients, better relationship with tax agent, but probably, more importantly, better informed clients that probably meet their obligations. Now, there's a lot more to it than that, but in a very simple form, we get the tax agent back in control of the client communication from the ATO.
So, and I think that's, from my perspective, and I'm sure Hank can say the same thing, the amount of clients that have got no clue what's sitting in there. And every accountant I can ever speak to and every client I ever speak to, if they have a tax debt, my first thing is you need to be looking at your MyGov on a weekly basis, because that's where new DPNs will show up. And one of the benefits of the electronic system is because the laws are so slow, they still are required to mail out through Australia Post the deep
Correct.
end to give the 21 days from the date of the letter. Now that's 7 days before they get it, but when they put it on the MyGov portal, it actually turns up nearly a week before the letter date. So you're
Yeah.
actually getting 28 days if you're proactive in keeping an eye on stuff.
Hey, Ash, you picked up a really important point here. One of the channels that ATOmate collects is paper. Now, that paper might be being delivered to the taxpayer by Aussie Post, but let's think about Aussie Post today. They only deliver to residential addresses every second day now. What was, ATO create a letter today and it got to the taxpayer in a couple of days. Depending on where you are, it's somewhere between 5 and 16 business days for Aussie Post to deliver that. It's a problem. So I love your comment. I'm going to go a bit harder at it, right, Hank? I think your advice to your clients should be, if your tax agent's not managing this and you kind of look it after yourself, maybe you need to have a talk to your tax agent about actually getting informed to help you meet the commitments and therefore not be in trouble.
So guys, we're 45 minutes in, and I think we're probably about 4 hours away from being able to tell all the story and everything that we want to do. So I am going to need us to wrap up. So I'll start with you, Hank, and give you a chance to just have some final thoughts that you might want to send out to or say to everyone listening. And then we'll wrap that up with Stan as well after that. So, any final thoughts for everyone, Hank?
Yeah, thanks, Ash. And look, the final thought I want to put out there is, look, there are options available for clients in financial distress, okay? Even if it's right at the last moment, okay? Sure, they're going to be less if they haven't been proactive and so on, but we've even had clients in here with DPNs with 1 day left to expire, and we've been able to deal with them, okay? And I think so number one, I want to say that it's never too late. Even if someone's got a client that they've had a liquidator appointed, quite often we get engaged just to help manage that process. The other thing I want to make clear is we do not charge for our initial advice at De Jonge Read. It's free. So to refer someone onto us, we'll sit down with them, we'll have a cup of coffee, we'll have a look at the best ways forward, we'll give them some advice in writing. Everything we do is in writing, and we won't charge them for that. Part of that advice will be a roadmap saying, listen, this is what we think you should do, and if you want to engage us, it will cost X amount of dollars. Everything we work on is a fixed fee. So I guess for a client, there's everything to gain and nothing to lose in chatting with us and having a coffee with one of our team. So I think that's probably the best wrap up I think I could do, Ash.
Right. And for you, Stan?
Look, I think I love that, Hank. I think that it's never too late. I agree. Prevention is better than cure. So I think, as much as I hate doing the hard sell, what we know is, as an accounting practice, you can manage these communications 2 ways. I hear from practices they're doing it very efficiently, which means they're not managing at all. It's a bit of fool's gold, though, is what we see mostly. You're not managing the communication by getting the documents and sending it to the client, but you're managing the problems that creates, right? So if you're managing this really effectively and you're not using automation, then it costs a lot of time. ATOmate will give you the capability to do both effective and efficient communication. I know your clients will love you for it. Client for life prevention's far better than cure. And part of that prevention is not just avoiding the problem completely, but being super informed early, then having the opportunity to actually introduce Hank and his team to make life easier for everybody in the process, because it's never really too late. early is better than late. And I had someone say recently, you're never right on time. You're either early or you're late. And I guess there's a bit of a choice at how you want to work as a tax agent and how you treat your clients.
Thank you, Stan. So I just one final thing, if I can just wrap up a whole lot of stuff, is that for a lot of people listening, we've already got clients that are in that almost too late phase. They just don't know it yet. And we're talking about having clients for life and preventing them getting to this spot. Sometimes we're actually talking about doing it backwards, that we take them to Hank and his team, and we actually tie them together and fix up the problem using an insolvency strategy or whatever strategy needs to be done. You can then bring them back into that preventative phase in the new life cycle of the business.
Yeah.
So we are going to see a lot that are already in this mess, and having ATOmate on board so you can flag it for the future is great, but we've got a problem now. We can deal with the problem now and then put them into that process where they become you and they are proactive together so that they never get there again. And one of the things that I find very interesting about the de Jonge Read business is that we don't get a lot of repeat clients, or basically none. And the reason why we don't is that it is a scary event going through a restructure, even though we hold their hand carefully, but they learn from that. And then they work very closely to make sure it never happens again. So thank you everyone for listening and coming along. To Hank and Stan, thank you very much for your time. Very, very insightful. We will put up a poll now that I would really love for you to take a little bit of time and fill that in as I finish up here. In the chat is also Stan's details, where you can email him, go to his website or phone number there. So you'll be able to take all of that down. The de Jonge Read webinar will be back again next month. I can't remember what we're talking about next month, but I'm sure it'll be good. And for those that listen to me regularly, I hope you enjoyed that it wasn't me doing talking for 45 minutes. So, Stan, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I know you're in the middle of another conference as well, so thanks for taking time out. And to you, Hank, as well, giving us the time to talk to everyone today. I will open up for some questions if anyone have got any for a couple of minutes that we've got left while we finish up the poll. But if you need to get going, finish the poll, and you can obviously jump out now, but we'll leave it open in case there's a question. Happy for you to unmute yourself and ask away, or type it if you prefer that. I do appreciate all the thank yous too from everyone. So thank you very much for putting that in there.
And a massive thanks to the de Jonge Read team for inviting me along. If you can't tell, I love a good chat. Thank you for everyone joining us. I just hope we've added some value to your day and hopefully your clients.
Absolutely well said. All right, I think that's about it, everyone. So thank you all very much, and we will start to wrap things up. Just for the sake of a recording, we leave it going for another minute or two, but you're welcome to head off from here.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks.